Good morning, colleagues, the ones who are here, the ones who are online, and we welcome Dr. Nthabiseng Moleko. Thanks for coming, honoring our invitation. You did earlier in the year when we invited you to a session we were doing with the infrastructure office and the Minister Zikalala, premiers, and several others. And good morning to everybody who is here today. So it's not a lengthy program that we will be having today. We targeted the people who had to attend here. Mainly it's people who've done a program at the NSG. My colleague will explain also about it later. So these are people who have interacted one way or the other. We are launching this Women Leadership Initiative. The actual start is in October, making it known now during this month that the program is effectively starting, and there are several reasons which will emerge out of it. As my colleague Prof. Paile indicated now, last year in the similar platform, we had the former president Mlambo Ngcuka and several other people, and we plan to have a lot more in future. The idea is that we bite this elephant in chunks, dealing with emerging issues that may be preventing women in the public sector to advance. And there's several of them. And you'll see with the diversity of the speakers and those who will be lecturing in the actual program when it begins in October, you'll see that we are dealing with not just the soft issues, but we are also dealing with the hard issues. I have said in the past that part of the reason why in the public sector women do not advance into leadership is because they tend to be confined to corporate services. And when a position of a DG or a CEO emerges, they will write in the advert that they are looking for relevant technical experience. So which means that if you're not an engineer, you cannot then apply because the position is looking for an engineer, unless there is a woman who's moved up to executive level position as an engineer. Then it means you will, because you are confined to corporate services, you will then not get the position. And hence, in having programs like these ones, we will deal with some soft issues that are barriers, systemic in the workplace, but also the hard issues, as Dr. Moleko, as an economist, will do today. In her conversation, there's a lot of hard stuff, hard data, and so on, which are essential for women to, break some barriers in the workplace, especially in the opportunity. We can have women as well engaging at the technical level, and not only have men engineers, men economists, men, statisticians, and things like those. And then women are just confined into corporate services. As I said, there are many public institutions where women are unable to move to the top because they largely confined to corporate services, and to the extent that they may not be gaining dynamic skills, dynamic, experience, and even, qualifications, their movement in the system then becomes limited. And of course, there is a lot of other systemic barriers as well. So Dr. Moleko is an economist. She's with Stellenbosch University. She's served at various levels in boards in the public sector, as well as in the private sector. We thought she's a relevant person, having served in many boards in the public sector. It means she knows what's happening in government. She knows what's happening in the public sector, could be in an SOE space at national as well as at a provincial level as well. And also she does a lot of consulting based on the skills that she has gained. She's with the Stellenbosch Business School. There is very few people who've got a business school experience or background who also balances that with public sector experience. And it's one of the reasons why we thought she would be the best person to come and have a conversation with us here. Those of you who are online, as people are moving in and out, please send the questions on the chat platform. You don't have to be reading them. We will find a way of engaging with the questions that are coming through the chat platform. The session is being recorded. We get a lot of demand after the session, like many members of parliament who couldn't be here today have asked that we send them the link of this session because there are sessions going on in parliament. So if you can put your phones on mute, please note that the session is recorded. There are some who are looking for it afterwards. Thank you, Program Director.
On that note, without much ado, welcome Dr. Thabi Moleko. May we welcome her, please?
Thank you. I'm wondering if my presentation will reflect, or must I put my, oh, you still have to, no, this is fine. No, this is fine. Yeah, it's going to take time to link that. I just want my presentation to show, while they are showing it on the board, let me just greet the principal, Professor Ngabeni, rather. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's really an honor. It's an honor to be asked to speak into the lives of people and to educate. You don't always get that opportunity. I also want to greet the Deputy Minister of Public Service and Administration who's online, Deputy Minister Pinky Kekana. I know that also there are other, as Professor has mentioned, other guests that are joining us today who are also online. I want to say all protocol observed. I want to also thank the MC and the program director, Prof. Millie, for the carrying today and just the welcoming upstairs, and also just a greeting to yourselves. Thank you for joining us this morning. I know we all have deadlines and other, deliverables and outputs that are expected of us, but I think educating ourselves actually empowers ourselves. So thank you so much for the invitation. Just a little bit of background, and I'm thankful that Prof. Ngabeni mentioned this. I used to actually head up a development agency, and I understand the challenges. So when I'm speaking here, I'm not speaking as someone who's theoretical. I know I'm an academic, but I used to run a development agency with 5 municipalities. I used to work with 5 councils, 5 municipal managers, 5 mayors. So you understand, I know the issues. I'm trying to make you relax that it's not just theory that I'm here to tell you about, but practically we can engage maybe in the question and answer. I know there's some of the challenges that you would experience as executives and government officials, and even those that are online that may not necessarily be in government, but just across the economic spectrum. So I think these are very close to my heart. But what I'm going to do in the presentation, I've been asked to talk about digital transformation. So it's somewhat different from just looking at issues that you may face in the workplace. But when you look at digital transformation, the issues, this thing is not moving. The issues are, can someone help me with just move it to the next slide. The issues are problematic in that, or wider, when we look at governance and social or economic development. So when we talk about digital transformation, what are we talking about? It's simply put to say there must be a process of innovation or technology that is used to transform and innovate a business process. What I have seen is that the definition talks to creation of a competitive edge. The definition talks to, simply put, how do technologies get used to assist us in solving a problem. You have many problems in the departments you're operating. You have many problems in the clusters or in the spheres you're operating. But are you thinking about the use of technology in solving the problem? In resolving a business, in creating solution in terms of that. In private sector, obviously use it to meet customer experiences. Why are we not doing the same in the public sector? What are the public sector experiences if I go to the Department of Home Affairs, if I go to Department of Basic Education, if I go to Department of Trade and Industry and its clusters? How are we using technology to try and enhance and quicken the experience of the end user? Or are we still stuck in programs of the 80s, 70s? We're still stuck in paper-based, processes when there's technology that can be used to enhance our outcomes. We can go to the next slide. And so it's important for us to make sure that we try to use technology to enhance that. The structure of the talk is across different sectors. What is innovation? And I'm going to talk to specifically higher education as an example in the public sector. We can go to the next slide. I'm not sure what's happening there with the sound. Okay, let's see. Testing.
Here we go.
Okay, thank you. We're back. And I'm hoping that everyone can hear me. All right. Sorry for that technical issue, but we'll get into the format of the talk. So what I want to talk to you about, I'm going to use the case study of the education sector, because I think it's better sometimes, and you can then look at what is your specific role in the entity that you're in, or in the department, or in the different unit or division that you're in, because I think then practically you can apply the lessons. I'm going to also look at what the key take-homes are. Okay, so they can see online. So the key take-homes is that I believe that if you employ, not just in higher education, but across the divide and the spectrum, if you employ digital transformation, that is, you put in place systems, you put in place innovation, and you create new processes that are more efficient, that are more inclusive, what it actually does is not only does it help you become more efficient, but it actually helps you to scale up. So you're able to do what you can. Now, an example is the digital technology. Instead of having a room of 100 people, you can have online hosting. And I think of that in terms of just the access, you don't have to have 100 rooms. You have to share a link to reach people is quicker. So people can reach quicker the other locations. You can also collaborate, I think. There's just
I don't know what is going on.
The company's digital transformation. So a lot of us are not used to alternative or creative ways of doing things. And so there's a change in the mindset that requires us to transform in the way we think about systems. And it is painful. It is painful because you're not used to doing things this way. It is painful because you've never done it this way. And I give the example later on of Uber and cryptocurrency. And these are just some of the examples of ways in which lives have changed, things are improved, and you don't physically have to do things because of technology. It's an app, but it's changed everyone's life. So one thing I want to share and focus on here is on the left-hand side. The South African outcomes in terms of education, we all know. Less than half of our children that enter school finish. Not just that, but of those enter into post-school education, a fraction. We want to increase our throughput and our education outcomes and say, let's say we want to push 7.1% going to university to 15%. What would that mean practically? It would mean you need to double the number of universities, isn't it? It would mean you need to have double the number of student accommodation. It would mean you need to have double the amount of faculty that is actually teaching. It would mean do you understand in terms of the scale? But that is what is needed in this country. How can you actually disrupt the model? What can you do and how can technology enhance that? We also have 6% of our learners that go to TVET colleges. Not everyone can go to university. These are very low numbers. So we know as a country, if we're going to change the economic outcomes, the fundamental input is education. Excuse me. And so if we don't deal with the input in education, we will still have high reliance on social grants. We'll still have asset wealth distribution that is unequal, with a large proportion of our asset wealth with the minority. 90% of our wealth is owned by 10% of the population. And we also know that women earn 30% less for the same work than men. And so education is a game changer. And so that's why I'm focusing on education in terms of higher education, but also on the sector, and you'll see why. The Center for Higher Education outlines, the objectives. We want to teach, we want to disseminate knowledge, we want to educate and enrich our students. This is what all the universities are trying to achieve. Want to provide work-ready graduates to build the economy. So these are the basic fundamentals of what we're trying to achieve. Now, we know resources are an issue, as I've pointed out. We know that time is an issue. We also know that efficiency is an issue. If we are going to multiply the actual outcomes on education, we have to make sure that the inputs are also aligned. So we know also that this is a problem statement now for me. If we want to have an exponential increase in learning options for learners, instead of 7% going to university, we want to double that 15%, which should actually be even higher. More developed economies and nations have far higher relationship between those who go to post-school education and matric, or what you'd call post-matric learning than what we have in South Africa. How can we make it more accessible? How can we make it more affordable? How can we make it more and enable the needs of the end user, which is the student, to meet the demand of what the country is trying to do? I believe technology is one of the solutions. And it's the same. You go to any department, you want to make beneficiaries and access improved to the end user, you've got to look at technology. You've got to look at how you make it accessible, affordable, and flexible. This is an example called University of the People, 100% online, 100% online. It's tuition free. Imagine that. With the poverty in South Africa, where you have 30 million people living in poverty, you can actually set this up, subsidize it by the state, but you ensure that it's accredited across the divide. This is an example as well, where many other universities, and I'm showing you these ones, that have accreditation and approval to do these type of higher school or higher education learning. What do they use? They simply use software. They simply use technology. They simply use online learning and online courses, and they use digital technology in the process of their teaching as a mandatory so that they can actually scale up. Can anyone guess how many people are being taught on this program at this university? No one's allowed to Google. Any takers? Online takers. You can chat, you can put in the chat. Let's see if anyone can get it right. 54 million. 54 million people are educated on this online program. Prof, 54 million employees. Okay. The government doesn't have 54 million employees, but whatever the optimal number would be, where you get 100% of everyone accessing, because you don't have the problem if you have data, the infrastructure, and all the requirements that are online. You can teach everyone anything online. You and which faculty, that's another aspect. But there should be no reason why this cannot be done in Africa. They offer 204,000 courses to 54 million students. And it's a teaching and a marketplace that I believe is a good example of how digital transformation has transformed this society. Why we as Africans are not thinking along these lines, and we're still thinking in the old model of going to a physical university in a physical classroom with the limitations we have of infrastructure, of resources, of faculty. We need to think in creative and innovative ways to start to solve the problem. They have different examples of education that is online. There's various member universities that are part and parcel of this. I know that at the business school, we have online MBA Essentials, for an example. They have it at London School of Economics. All these Ivy Leagues. Why is it that it's MIT, Harvard, LSE, Oxford, all these Boston and Berkeley? We are the ones who need our people to have access to this education. These are already I'd say the first or the Ivy League universities, and yet we know that we as Africa need the same type of inputs far more, because we're the ones who are having limited access in terms of enrollment in education facilities, enrollment in these type of programs. And so I'd say we've got to innovate. That's my solution. We have to think out of the box. I think where you are, you've got to look at what is the problem statement that you are facing in the department you are in the division that you are in. What is the problem statement of access that you're facing? How can your business therefore look at innovation to solve that? How can you use technology to try and help you deal with the flexibility issues to improve the process or the throughput? How can you use innovation fundamentally to change how you bring value to customers? If a school can reach 54 million people, what is stopping us? What is stopping us? Because it just requires a mindset change. It requires you to look at how you have development of revenue streams. If you want to charge fees, of course you can do that, but how you collect fees, what they're paying for, and so forth, the model will change
to the normal education model that a university has? And has the higher education department even begun to think about the products and the services that are needed? Has your department or your unit or the entity you're in even begun to think about what technology can do to change the way we do things to make it more efficient and more advanced? And I think this is where we need to go. I use the example of Uber. Uber is not that taxis are still not here. It's just that it makes life easier. If you have a child and you can't pick them up, guess what? You can get an Uber to pick them. I don't know how many of you have used Uber. It is so useful. If you can't be at home and someone needs to be dropped off, you can get an Uber to pick them up. It's an app. It's still the same hardware. Whether now we can talk to the political economy of the Uber and whether the people that are using Uber and driving Uber are getting paid fair wages, you know, the commissions, that's another discussion. But the technology itself has improved the lives of millions of people at the app. And you can literally get a car, and now there's more safety features and so forth. There's complaints around certain other type of these apps, but you choose which one you make use of. You can even choose Uber Black, you can choose a van, you can get deliveries. There's now even food that is being delivered. And it was just an idea, but it's innovation and it's use of technology. No one ever thought that cell phones could be what they are now. If you were around, I was born in the 80s. I don't know, people that were born in the 70s, people that were born in the 90s never actually, I don't think they even know what a landline is. Do they know what a landline is? They've never seen these phones with the wire thing. It's ancient to them. Some of you grew up with these things. In fact, I remember when we were growing up, if you were visiting a relative, you couldn't phone in advance and tell them, you just rock up. Now you must phone, you must notify in advance. But technology then wasn't there where you were able to inform people in advance of everything that's happening real time. Something can happen now. Someone puts it up on an app or somewhere on social media, is there real time, even live. This is because of the technology of cell phones. And I won't talk to the enhancement that cell phones have brought. But the context we're operating in with inequality is that, yes, there are these services, but we know that women's participation in the economy is far lower at around 26% than men. This is globally. In South Africa, we know that the informal proportion of work is far higher. So women are in these unprotected, where there's what I call very weak employment protection legislation. More than 1 million women, and it's the biggest contributor to employment, are operating in private households as domestic workers. Most of them, and it's the lowest threshold for organized labor. There's no organized labor there. Very low threshold for contracts, very low threshold for work if you're on leave or payment when you're from leave. The nature of the contract, many of them don't even have contracts. So this issue of informal work, it affects mainly women. It's across the divide, particularly in African economies. We also see that there's a gender pay gap. So you get less, between 24 and 34%, 30 and 24%. In the South African case, it's around 30 on average based on SSA data. And we also know that a lot of us are spending more time in unpaid care work, 2.5 times more than men. So these constraints are the reality for most women in the society. Technology does have a bearing, and we've got to take this into consideration and not behave as though if we take on and employ technology, it will just have opportunities. It does threaten those who work in subsectors, particularly those that are informally skilled, that are using manual labor. It does threaten and have issues around the participation of women in the labor force, particularly if their jobs are going to be replaced. So we've got to be carefully looking at these issues. We know that women are worse off in terms of unemployment. Here, I show you this. This is the youth unemployment level in the country. It's at 60%. We know that right now that women unemployment is higher, this is the green line, than the male unemployment. So women face a wider unemployment level than men. It's usually 4 to 5% higher depending on the year. Since the time of 2008, when the labor force survey was beginning to be constructed, the gap has always been women have a higher unemployment. red. That is a structural issue. That is because there's discrimination in the labor market. There's discrimination in the labor market, and the policies in the labor market that need to respond to this haven't dealt with it sufficiently. Because what you should be seeing, instead of it remaining flat, you should start to see a dip towards the red so that it is equal. This hasn't happened. So what it's saying is that this high level of unemployment, South Africa's unemployment level is now at 42%. And I want to underline that. 42% is not 33. 33%, you cannot forget 3 million discouraged work seekers and say you have a 33% unemployment. Let's forget that unemployment rate of 33. Focus on the expanded definition that includes everyone, even those that are hopeless, that have simply given up looking for work. And so in South Africa, you have a scenario where you have 42% of the population. And if you break it down to provinces, you'll find that 7 of the provinces have more than 40% of the population unemployed. It's a shocking statistic. In 2 of the provinces, you have more than half the population not working. In fact, you have more people looking for work unemployed than those that are actually working. So we have a serious crisis from an economic context. So when we look at digital transformation, the question should be, how can we use digital transformation and technology not to replace people working, but to expand productivity and to expand output and to help me be more efficient in what I do so that I can create more opportunities? And I think that's the context within which we need to carefully look at digital transformation because of our very high poverty rate. GDP is estimated to grow at around negative 0.1%, or rather it's currently, the last quarter, it was at negative 0.1. We are contracting. The next year, it's estimated at just over a percentage, this year, a percentage growth. You can't have a 1% growth in a country with 42% unemployment. So what it's saying is that how can we use digital transformation in the expansion of our economic output and in the formulation of efficient economic strategies and in the execution of my job as an official, as an executive in my department, so that I can contribute to lessening poverty, to lessening youth unemployment, to widening year-on-year GDP and ensuring that these are improved. What is it that I will do? Disruption has happened in what I call finance, traditional banks versus what I call mobile apps. A lot of the lenders and the borrowers in terms of the profile have changed. So disruption has happened where the spread, which is what you're paying, has been lowered quite significantly, and you actually as a lender are getting much more money in comparison to what you were previously. The other thing I want to point out is that technology is not always adopted and absorbed automatically. So there's what we call an adoption theory and an adoption curve. So that the theory just says that individuals take time to accept a particular innovation. So when something came, I don't know what it is that you may have rejected. Maybe your children have tried to get you to use WhatsApp. Imagine 10 years ago when they said use WhatsApp, you were like, 5 years ago, you were like, maybe. A year ago, you'll find that old people are actually now all using WhatsApp and WhatsApp group. But this wasn't always the case. You actually found it as an irritation. Do you see what I'm saying? So it takes time for people to accept a technological or a particular innovation. Sometimes it's never accepted, but the extent to which it is accepted, you can see they call it the innovator. So there's people that immediately catch on. So you can come up with an innovation in the department or where you are, people immediately catch on. You can also see that there are early adopters and early majority. There are people that come on late. I don't know if you're a late arrival, but there are people that can come in late, and some of what we call laggards that simply put, they don't want the technology. So there are people who are anti-technology. You can't change them. It's just who they are. But the majority of people can actually take on innovation and accept innovation, and you'll find, and you'll use this in the example where people are actually becoming hostile to technology, hostile to Uber drivers, hostile to any new technology because it threatens their existence. And so what you need to do is to find what is it that threatens the laggards and how can I improve their, it's likely that their livelihood may be threatened. How do I ensure that they are roped in and they do not get thrown out in the process of us adopting technology. So this is an example of different technological innovations. So TVs is an example here. So I like TVs because we can all relate. So TVs, it shows you, in the time when they were created in the 40s, there were TV before, but it shows you that you took some time. So this is the number of years, the period. You took some time, this is 60s, maybe about 20 years, for people to adopt and accept it. And then every household, you see it reaches about 100% around the 70s. Every then household has it. You can see electricity, air travel, PCs, every technology you can actually measure and see how long did it take for it to be adopted, and then when did it get to 100%, i.e. when does it become the norm rather than a few or a handful of people making use of it. Let's look towards the latter years. Here on the right-hand side, where you begin to see the green, you begin to see, okay, in the 60s, people started using credit cards. You can see people started using microwaves. Okay, that took some time, maybe about 15 years for people to accept. It's still not at 100%. And then you see here the reds and the yellows, internet, smartphones, social media. You begin to see the advent of high-definition TVs. All these new things that are coming in, we are still not at 100%. Can everyone see that? We are sitting at around 40, 45, at some points 50%. In others, they are sitting at far higher levels at around 80, 85. Why? Because it's taking time for people to adopt the technology. It's called an adoption curve. So people take time to adopt technology. It doesn't happen overnight. That's the reality. And so even as you plan for any type of technological change or innovation, expect that it will take time for people to transition and adopt the technology. And you've got to bear that in mind. Here's another example just of two. Internet, the white line is the internet usage. And you see the internet usage over time versus what happened with what they call cryptocurrency. So adoption rate of crypto, so this new technologies is adopted far quicker than some of these old technologies. And this internet usage was adopted from around 2016. And you see here that in millions, and it's shown in total number of internet users, the growth. And you can measure the growth year on year. But the point I'm making here is that new technologies seem to be adopted far quicker than they are these older technologies. And I think it's because people have realized some mindset change and the opportunity. So what you have is the opportunity with digital transformation to have better internal efficiencies, right? To disrupt and have disruptive change. Imagine 54 million kids at university in Africa. In Africa, with the number of children that are underdeveloped, unskilled, and not trained. Imagine the impact. If someone could think somewhere, how can we, instead of having individual faculty, individual schools, and we agglomerate and aggregate at scale. Anyway, I'm thinking my own thing. Let me get back to the topic. There are external opportunities that always arrive in terms of what can be done around digital technology. So I've already spoken to this, and I think that in every sector division, in every department, digital transformation has the opportunity to unlock efficiency, help you operate with speed. So don't reject it. When new proposals come on how we can use digital transformation technology to be more efficient, I know the bureaucracy operates differently, usually from other subsets, but it actually helps you to be more agile. It helps you to be more flexible. It helps you to improve scale. And at times, it's even more affordable. So it has a greater efficiency aspect, and it broadens outreach, unlocking greater systems. So these are some of the technologies that you could use, to do this type of, 54 million. And it's the same in efficiencies for rolling out, things. Zoom is the platform we're using now. YouTube is used, Udemy and BitDegree. These are all platforms that you have to use. This is the technology that you'd use in order to move forward. Some of the general technologies that are used in terms of advancing transformation, I'm not an expert in none of these, so don't ask me what they are. But I know that blockchain and AI and Internet of Things, big data, 3D robotics, and all these, there's experts that know much more about these things than I do. But these are the things now that are moving the world forward. And I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, if we are left behind, This is where the government sits. But you've got energy, you've got supply chain, you've got legal, you've got food. This is now the subsectors: healthcare, insurance, travel, hospitality, education. All of these sectors have opportunities to improve efficiency, access. All of these sectors have opportunities to improve agility and flexibility for the person. Look at what the Dubai government, and now this is what governments are doing to position themselves as governments of the future. They are saying, we are the place to go for metaverse strategies. We are the place to go in the next 10, 20, 30 years. If you want to scale up, if you want to have global and safe platforms, we are the #1 place to go globally for this metaverse economy. Some of us don't even know what a metaverse economy is. We've never heard of it. We're not even interested. But there are governments who have a foresight about what they want to do in the next 10, 20, 30 years around technology. And they are saying, we want to support the development of digital jobs, virtual jobs. What will this do? It will add $4 billion to the Dubai economy. How are we thinking ahead? As a leader in your division, in your company, how are you thinking ahead as to how transformation and use of digital technology can assist you to expand and to grow and to have better impact and to help to develop, the regional and the national goals and the targets? Of course, it depends on the different functions that you have and the objectives in the department. But certainly, if we are not thinking ahead in terms of 10, 20, 30 years from now, I'll tell you, in trouble. So LinkedIn shows you what are the jobs on the rise. What are the jobs on the rise? You can see these are normal jobs. Legal and finance are what we've always seen. But if you see insights, analytics, these are new jobs. If you look at security, sustainability, cybersecurity, technology and IT, and you see that these are some of the subsectors, thank you. These are some of the subsectors that are underpinning, I'd say, or underpinned by digital transformation. So we're able to see that these subsectors that are growing and these subsectors that are on the rise are very much linked to digital transformation, and some of those subsectors that I mentioned earlier that speak to the digital space. If you look at what are the inputs and the drivers, I want you to carefully look at this and see that there will be in the future various things that happen. If we don't begin to plan for those, we may end up in trouble. If you look here, we know for a fact that there's slower global economic growth. We know for a fact that there's a rising cost of living. All of us have experienced the rising cost of food. We know for a fact that there's increased geopolitical division. If you look at what's happening in the Arab states, if you look at what happened in Russia, Ukraine, if you look at, it's still ongoing. These things haven't ended. So what is the effect and the impact of this on us? The other aspects are very much technology. How are we going to use data and technology? How are we going to broaden digital access? How are we using frontier technology and adopting new technologies in the operations that we have? These are from the World Economic Forum job trends. They do future jobs, that's what it's called, future jobs trend survey every year. Every year. If you're a leader and you are in the space of government where you are leading and you've never looked at the future and what's going to happen in the future, I can tell you we have a problem. How are you planning for the future? If you're not able to deal with and discuss how the demographic dividend and the younger population, that's what demographic dividend, the portion of the youth that is increasing, and if you're not dealing with how adoption of new and frontier technology is going to disrupt your sector, we're in problems. So these are some of the key things that are going to change the macroeconomic trends, and they're going to affect us as Africans. The issue of climate change is mentioned here. The issue of consumers becoming more vocal on environmental issues is mentioned here. The issue of how our government regulates communication, regulates these social media platforms, regulates the use of data. That is something we need to see. How is this data being used? A lot of you are having loyalty cards, as an example. How many people use loyalty cards? Most of you. Do you know that that is your data? Every time you go and you swipe, or every time you say, I want to buy at Clicks, and there's a Clicks Club card, and you give over. Or every time you at Pick n Pay, you're buying there, you have a Pick n Pay, I don't know what it's called, Saver. Or you even, the Vitality card is a good example. They track your health data using you. You give freely that data. But they're trying to forecast, what will I do in the future? How will I behave? Am I actually healthy? Do I go to gym often enough? Should I reduce the medical aid premiums? Or is this a risky client, this one? Is likely to have heart attack and, hypertension. Why? Because of the data they collect. They can work it out based on how you behave. They can project and say, this is the type of profile, this one is likely to have hypertension, this one. They don't go to gym. They don't eat kwai. They don't drink smoothies because they collect the data. So these retailers and these companies are using huge databases to collect your data, which you freely give. Who is regulating that? If you're in a regulation space, if you're in a government policy space where you can regulate that, or you are not necessarily doing that, it's something we need to think about. But the long and short, what I'm encouraging us to do is to understand that this is a huge sector. The growth of these forecasts that I'm showing you, these are some of the subsectors that are likely to grow this into a 210 trillion industry. Imagine now, we are not thinking about a 210 trillion industry. We're still thinking about old industries when we talk economic development growth. We're not thinking about Internet of Things. We're not thinking about gene editing. I don't even know what that is. Robotics, okay, AI, 3D printing, mobile and devices, digital wallets. These are all the new industries, and they're projected to grow. None of them is going to grow at less than 27% per annum. None. So you're going to get left behind if you don't consider all these aspects. 2020, it was much smaller, and you can see the value is actually enhancing from 14 trillion. That's more than 20 times the growth almost in terms of in the space of 10 years. And how are Africans and African governments aligning themselves when they talk economic strategy, growth strategy, looking at all these issues? Even as a government official at an executive level, at a management level, how are you making use of and understanding better how you can make use of technology and digital transformation to improve the processes? So what is the way forward as I conclude? Digital transformation is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. If you decide to ignore it, you will get left behind. Of that 200 how much was it? 210 trillion US dollar industry. I think that the fastest movers reap the most of the benefits. So be an early adopter. Engage this thing. Don't be scared of it. Get more, maybe do more teachings and educate. Invite all those people that are experts on all these subsectors that know more about it as to how do governments, how do officials, how do departments use it to enhance agility, flexibility, and also to enable us to be more efficient. You know, it's sad for me when I have to go at government department because you're just like, I'm glad I'm in the Western Cape because there it takes 1 hour. If I have to go anywhere outside, I'm like, yo, because you know the system that day may be down. You may wait in the queue just as it's your turn. They say the system is down. The frustration. Where is the digital transformation? Where is the innovation? Why are we not able in the public sector to innovate so that we operate at scale and at speed and collaborate? These technologies are there. There are African and young entrepreneurs who have these skills. We need to tap into each other's subset of skill and create value and ensure that we decentralize these things possible. I think in terms of the gender aspect, I think digital transformation can be an equalizer. Imagine you have access to schooling and it's online. It means that even if you're looking after children or you have housework or you have limitations, safety and security, you can't travel at night. South Africa, the GBV numbers are horrendous. If you have access to online learning, you don't have to leave the house. Everyone can access. No one is limited. If you have improved mobile device and usage of, particularly in the informal sector, which what we've seen with e-payments, the security, your money as a woman, and if you leave at the end of the day, that money is in an e-wallet, is not on you. So that enables you to capture that revenue, and you don't have the security issue that you'd have to contend with if you're carrying physical money. I would say that artificial intelligence is a double-edged sword in that you lose potentially a lot of manual jobs. So we have to carefully look at how we retrain and reskill, and also how we ensure that there is a balance. At times, we need to say the rate at which we adopt these technologies must be slowed down so that we don't lose jobs, because we have an unemployment crisis in this country. We also need to look at issues around cybersecurity. How do we invest in cybersecurity? We heard a lot of the time about these hackers that come and, Transnet was down last year for a month or something. They couldn't move anything because of some hacker. I don't know how these people set up their systems, but if you don't have strong cybersecurity and the technical know-how, how many of us are thinking cybersecurity in the departments, in the divisions? How many of us are ensuring that we make investment, not just in appointing IT, because if the business process involves as an integral part digital transformation, it means that you as a director, as a manager, you need to understand these things. It's not just an IT somewhere who's sitting in the back office. It becomes an integral part of the business process. And so we as women need to promote and invest in ourselves, understanding these issues around technology, AI, robotics, and so forth, and not just leave it to IT, and empower yourself. So these courses are needed, Prof. I think from a tertiary education perspective and a systemic perspective, the science, technology, and engineering and mathematics, I wrote a paper about 4 years ago on this. There's very few women in these sectors, particularly at director, even at ownership level. We have got to. The issue is the primary education enrollment. The DBE, they have to massify the number of teachers, the number of training in math and science. Our numbers in terms of globally, when you compete South Africa against other nations, in Africa, we have the lowest level of aptitude for learners. And yet we have the most significant budget that is set aside in terms of as a proportion of GDP for education and training. It's horrendous outcomes. And that's telling you that our curriculum, our throughput, there's a problem in DBE. It has to be resolved because we need the science and the technology. But for that, we need to transform our mathematics and science outputs. It's simply put, we need to end maths literacy. I'm going to say that, so that we can strengthen the capability. You can't do robotics, AI on maths literacy. You cannot think of the Internet of Things and all these things. Forget it. We're not talking about the future if we're still talking about math literacy. If we want to talk about the future, we've got to enhance our capabilities. And I say a discussion must happen, Prof, with the DBE on this issue as to what are we trying to achieve are sufficient and adequate for what we need. There's got to be a systemic change in government and its processes. I think I end there, and I thank you. Thank you so much.
A big thank you once more for sketching such an important picture in an accessible, detailed manner, using just a few illustrations with that deep dive in that particular sector, Dr. Moleko. The effects of the delays, marginalizations on women and their opposites. And we are left with that urge not to pretend we do not know better. We cannot do better. I don't want to go too far ahead. I want to reiterate the launch of the Women in Leadership program which is championed by the Minister for Women, Youth, and Persons with Disability, who cannot be here for reasons mentioned by Principal in the morning, parallel commitments, parliamentary portfolio committees. But in our midst, online, we have Champion Deputy Minister for Public Service and Administration, Madam Pinky Kekana, who will share her remarks as a respondent and paint a picture also towards the launch of the Women in Leadership Program. Over to you, Madam Kekana.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I hope I'm audible. My apologies for not being with you there. I'm not well, and I thought I can't miss this opportunity. Let me recognize Professor Busani Naweni, the principal of the National School of Government, our keynote speaker, Dr. Ntabise Muleko, who's the development economist from Stellis Business School, and also who's the chairperson of the National Empowerment Fund. I'm not sure if you are still attached, Doctor, to the Commission on Gender Equality, because I know you also played a role at another level. Let me also recognize executives from NSG and all our colleagues who are there represented, including those from the Department of Public Service and Administration, and other guests and participants. Today is not just about the leadership by women in positions of authority in the public sector in South Africa. Today is about the transformative impact of their leadership on the very fabric of public service across the country. South Africa, with our rich cultural heritage and diverse society, and especially now, with a new government of national unity, stands at a critical juncture in our development journey. The need for effective, accountable, and visionary public service has never been more vital. To meet this need, we must embrace and harness the full potential of all our citizens, and women specifically, who represent half of the South Africa's population. The contribution and leadership of women in public service has historically been underutilized for various reasons. But against the backdrop of the National Framework towards Professionalization of the Public Sector, which was approved by Cabinet in 2022, we are set to change that with this National School of Government's Women in Leadership Program, targeting women in senior management and executive roles in the public sector, launching it now. It is a well-known fact that women bring a unique perspective and an incomparable set of skills to any role we take on, and very specifically, all leadership roles we occupy. Women approach things differently to men, not better or worse, just different. And when the world of work utilizes these strengths, great things happen. As an example, a woman approach to governance and management often emphasizes inclusivity, empathy, and collaboration. These qualities also happen to be essential for effective public service. research consistently shows that diverse leadership teams outperform homogeneous ones, leading to more innovative solutions, better decision-making, and increased trust in institutions. All things needed to professionalize the public sector. For many decades now, women leaders all across the world have continuously demonstrated exceptional abilities and unique capabilities in the public service. From presidents and prime ministers of large and small nations to ministers and political appointees to general administration and all those who proudly call ourselves public servants, women have been at the forefront of significant policy development and global life-changing reforms and initiatives. Their leadership has changed the course of history. It has improved education outcomes, enhanced healthcare delivery, and definitely created more equitable economic development through more inclusive financial participation. These successes are not anecdotal. They are evidence of the profound impact women can have on public service when given the opportunity. Increasing women's leadership in public service can be fraught with challenges from structural barriers such as unequal access to education and professional development, to persistent gender biases and limited support for women in leadership roles. Additionally, societal attitude and stereotypes often undermine women's contribution and hinder their advancement. This is why the National School of Government has designed the Women in Leadership program, aligned to both South Africa's National Development Plan 2030 and the AU's Agenda 2063 aspiration, specifically Aspiration 6, which calls for, I quote, an Africa whose development is people-driven, relying on the potential of African people, especially its women and youth, close quote, as well as healthy governance system that promote human rights. Policy reforms that promote gender equality in public service start with investing in education and professional development for women. And this includes not only academic education, but also targeted leadership training and mentorship programs. This will lead to ensuring equal opportunities for career advancement, implementing quotas or targets for women in leadership roles, and creating supportive work environments. Now, the NSG has specifically designed the program to achieve these outcomes and more by ensuring they are on par with international and local women's leadership development practices, which compels participation in a stipulated program over a given cycle of service. Strategically, this program seeks to facilitate ways of changing stereotypes about gender and women, removing barriers to the participation of women in all economies, but specifically the digital economy, and broadening platforms for innovation and entrepreneurship. And all of us have seen the impact that when we use innovation and technology can bring from what Dr. Ntabiseng has just indicated. A game changer in a big way to resolve challenges that we are confronted with in the public sector. So Prof. Busani and the NSG have long been advocates of making the public sector appealing as a world of professional work. Now, this program allows us to build and sustain awareness about the value of women's leadership in public service, which can help shift societal attitude and challenge stereotypes, showcasing successful women leaders and highlighting their contribution to society through public service. While the journey towards professionalizing public service in South Africa through women's leadership can be a challenge, but it is also a massive opportunity. By embracing and supporting women leaders, we are not only advancing gender equality, but also strengthening the effectiveness and impact of public service itself. And as I conclude, let us commit to creating an environment where women's voices are heard, women's leadership is recognized, and contributions are valued. Together, we can build a future where public service in South Africa reflects the diverse talents and perspective of all our people, leading to more equitable and sustainable development for all. Malibongwe.
Re a go leboga, Deputy Minister. A big thank you, colleagues. She can hear our applause. Having launched the program, we want to give you a snippet of the detail that has framed the program, after which we will then open the session to your reflections, questions directed at Dr. Moleko and Deputy Minister. Okay, are you able to enlarge it a bit, Coulson? So we are dropping this on the Zoom chat for your access by email, so you can have a good read, a good overview of what it is that we intend with the program. And in the next week or so, please look out for a live registration link together with details for enrollment and those kinds of logistical requirements. What we want to emphasize is this is timely, curated with the kinds of issues, opportunities, affordances through technology, through inclusivity that bring people like you, women, and people like you who have shown interest in continuing professional development and leadership development by partaking of our NSG executive education programs. There we have it, and thank you, Coulson. So together with Principal, may we now please open the session to your reflections, and we'll be assisted if there is a hand and there is a question that has not been answered, such as what I've just done now about the program information. Let us know, and we will incorporate it in our responses. By nothing yet, good. So we'll take priority indoors right here in front of us. Any comment does not have to be a question. It can also be a question. Okay, thank you. Let's say who you are and then proceed.
Good morning, everyone. Morning, the Honorable Deputy Minister and our guest speaker, Dr. Nthabise Moleko. My name is Kagisho Chinyana from CSOS, the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act Advisory Council to the Minister of Human Settlements. I find this to be a very comprehensive and quite relevant presentation more than anything. And I just want to give compliments to yourself, guest speaker, for that. Why is it relevant? I think it's relevant because we are in the era of the fourth industrial revolution, wherein the private sector is planning. It's planning in line of the fifth generation, where they are busy intensifying the developments around infrastructural opportunities in terms of building 5G infrastructure to ensure that we've got reliable, efficient services that we could utilize in terms of accessing network opportunities, accessing our phones and cloud services and so forth. But the question now remains to say, what is it that we are doing as the public sector or leadership in public sector to ensure that we grab on those opportunities? And I think that's the most important question that I'm hoping that the program would be able to address going forward, to say, how do we then align ourselves with those opportunities of infrastructural developments to ensure that we are there? But at the same time, I think it's very important to also ensure that we do not get just too, for lack of a better word, excited in our planning with regards to all these, technology developments. Too excited, I mean, by virtue of us just, gripping systems and applications that might not necessarily be sustainable because they are costly. And I'm sort of even reminded of, a program such as, rather a phase where we're going through the World Cup, where there were a lot of projects that were aimed at grooming SMEs and so forth, and a lot of investment was done to ensure that people are benefiting from that phase. However, if we were to check the sustainability of those projects, it's not really, it was not sustainable enough, which tells you that there was no enough research. But on the contrary as well, I would like in conclusion to also maybe encourage that the program would need to a greater extent focus on the issue of change management. And I think Dr. Moleko touched base on that quite a bit in her presentation, to say, we need to acknowledge that technology can also, or digital transformation rather, can also be intimidating quite intensively, especially if you were to check how business has been operated in the past. Most of the departments, most of the divisions are used to the traditional way of doing things. But unfortunately, we have to catch on with what is happening in the globe. So let's just take also note of that, to say the program needs to address issues such as ensuring that people are well prepared, the mindset is also ready to adopt and catch on with the requirements of digital transformation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll take the second and then allow for a response.
Thank you so much. And good morning, Deputy Minister, Program Director, and the principal of the school. And thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I was listening online and as I was driving, and I thought, let me come, because I was in the area, let me come also physically. So I did catch on to some of the conversation, the discussion that was happening, the opening and the address. And as I was listening to, especially the curve that Dorotela shared about how long it takes for technology to be adopted, it made me reflect about our own I guess challenges as women in leadership to occupy the spaces, and how long it's taking for us to entrench ourselves and for society to accept that women have something to offer in the leadership positions. And I was asking myself, this is just for us to reflect on, that what can we learn from what research has told us about the adoption of technology and how hard it is for people to change their mindsets, that we can then use to drive the inclusion of us, especially in the program like this one, when we are saying we're putting women at the center of leadership? What insights can we learn from that, and how can we then bring our uniqueness as women to drive our own agenda forward? And the next point is then also, how can we use technology to drive, I mean, I see the vision, the ethical and capable public sector, but the ethical aspects of governance, or to assist, especially at board level. You know, I haven't come across technological advancement in that space, in again, something to reflect on. What can we use to assist in enabling the cause of good governance? Thank you. Oh, my name is Dr. Sibongile Vilakazi.
Okay, shall we take your response? We have two
Okay.
online, so
No
we
problem.
allow for you. Thanks.
Thank you. Let me start with the first comment, just to thank the participant on the change management emphasis. And I think this is pivotal for government, because what you find is that the younger crowd, and it goes to the curve that has just been mentioned by the last speaker, the younger generation is more adaptable, more flexible, and they want change. They want things done quicker. They are innovative. They come with solutions. And then what happens is that they face the barrage of a wall with those that have been here for 30 years. They'll tell you, we've been here for 30 years, you've just come Mafikizor. And they will resist you. And so I think we really have to, oh, okay, it's fine if I sit. We really have to look at how do we face this conundrum, because in government, you have a large portion of officials and also people at the top that are much older. And in seniority, they are the large majority. If we're talking digital transformation and we're talking the use of these alternative technologies, and there's so many of them, and we haven't even begun to scratch the surface, but you don't deal with the mindset of those who are in power and their resistance to these things. I think what has to happen is there has to be a parallel process of educating on the benefits. And I think that's where it comes in. You have to show the benefits. What is the benefit? I mean, let me give an example now. You asked the question of governance. I was in Accra last week, a week and a half ago. I was blown away. The hospital that I went to, it's paperless. When I say it's paperless, this is a public hospital. It's called the Medical University of Ghana. Imagine our public hospitals being paperless. That hospital, you walk in, I think I still have that card. I don't have it here. We needed to get cards. So you walk in and you get a card. There's a digital card that make you go and register. No one walks around with paper. Then this card, then they tell you, go here. And then when you go there, I think they take your vitals. It's put into the system in this card. You're not walking around with paper. You know, we still have files. Okay. If you go now to the next station, the doctor, before the doctor sees you, then they check, what are your vitals fine? Or your whatever. Then do you need other tests? It's all the inputs are put on this digital card. And then by the time the doctor sees you, they have all your information on the card. Imagine that happening in our public hospitals. How would that change? I mean, the experience when you are a person who goes to, I don't know, give me a public hospital, Baragwanath. Yeah, let me use Baragwanath. It's got a bad reputation. Imagine our people, they don't have to look for the files. The things are on the system doesn't go offline. But now what it means is that there's a transformed. The people that are managing admin, those nurses there, and those clerks that are not willing to do this thing off the card, because it means they must be changed. But now what does that mean for the management. You can't just say to them, we're changing, no more, whatever. You have to show them the benefits. You have to inculcate in them that this is for the good of the beneficiaries and the people who are serving, the end user, but also it's for the good of you, because now you don't rely, and you must train them on how to use the software, the new systems and so on. Otherwise, they will resist this thing because they think they're going to lose their jobs. They think that now they don't have the opportunity to stay. So I think for me, fundamental, we've got to start to unpack how can our systems and processes, which is the bane of the existence of the public sector. This is the reason why people don't want to go into the public sector, because now if I don't have that card or that file, I've lost it, I'll never get help. But there's digital systems that can store data, there's clouds, there's all these other things. We are nowhere near to transforming our ways. Now, the other aspect is we're talking, even before we talk governance, you lose these young people. They go to the private sector. And yet we've got to build a meritocracy in the government of new cadres. We've got to develop these young kids who are in these top tier universities to say, I want to serve in the public service. I can come with innovation. I can learn about new ideas in all these places where I go. And then I come and I implement, and I won't be resisted. In fact, it will be welcomed. So I think that this is part and parcel of the issue of the change management. The two comments that were made by Dr. Vilakazi, the first one, I think it deals with the general scope, but I think the last one on how you can use technology and digital technology for governance and improving governance, I think you can. You can measure outputs, you can measure effects and deliverables of KPIs. You can measure things like the performance, try and make it less subjective. You can use these systems. So from a governance perspective, there's issues of performance management. There's issues of meeting the targets and deliverables. There's issues of measuring impact. How many of us are able to say, how impactful is my department? How impactful, even if you look at it from a discipline of the department you're in or aggregate, because you are contributing to the overall objective, measurable KPI. You as a team, as a unit, are all contributing or co-contributing to try and minimize and monitor the impact a unit has, and you use technology to impact and to try to de-subjective. If you fight with your boss, shouldn't matter, because your inputs are very much measurable. If they don't like you for whatever reason, you're too loud, you're too pink, you wear red lipstick, you wear high heels, I don't like you. People cannot like you for things you don't even know. But people have issues in life. So now imagine you get to a place, people don't like you, but there's a performance management system that is less subjective and less dependent on variable factors, but it actually can say your contribution is actually so much to this process, and it guarantees that you are safeguarded from subjectivity in a way. So I'm saying that there are ways that this digital transformation can help. There are things that it cannot replace us. So it cannot replace ethics. It cannot replace, I think certain aspects. I think supply chain, we've got to look at supply chain, particularly when corporate services. Supply chain is a sore point because the corruption and the delays that happen there. If you can use digital technology to look at when something was submitted, there was a report that was published now about government and how the Eastern Cape has the highest non-payment of invoices, followed by all the other provinces. And it shows the level and the number of billions. Now, if you could use software to say, who's not paying? Where does it stop? When was this invoice submitted in the value chain? Who is this person? Where does this thing get blocked? I can tell you now, once the digital technology can pinpoint that it goes in the system, it started here, it moved from here, and then here it's stopping. And I'll use Professor, let's say Professor, I won't use any of your names. Let's say Prof is the one here on this third leg. Then you can say, okay, the problem here is Prof Muswane here. Let's deal with him. Because Why are all the invoices getting stuck at that point? The technology will help you. You don't need someone to go and investigate and then you become enemy number one. Technology will tell you this was submitted in the system, and you start to digitize and use software instead of individual manual submission and all of that. It will help this country. I can tell you, we can move very forward, but of course there's very vested interest in that. So I think there's those type of ideas that I have that I think could assist.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Online, start with Deputy Minister and then come to Madam Lydia at CPSI, I believe, in that order. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Program Director, and thanks to the participant. I think what Kagiso says is very important, especially the pace at which from the public sector we are connecting far-flung rural areas. But let me put the matter into context. If you remember very well, the telcos wanted spectrum. And when they give you spectrum, they are also saying, wherever you are going to participate, make sure that the communities in those areas are connected. Now, in terms of connectivity, that's one of the requirements that your Vodacom, MTN, and them have to do. But then government also says, because there are deep rural areas, we'll come back as government and do it through what we call SA Connect, and we have what an entity called Broadband Infraco. So that's why the rural connectivity, because government can't go to Sandton and go and connect Sandton because those people can afford. But also telcos are moving there and they have made it easier for people to connect. But where it becomes important, it's how we use technology to resolve the challenges. Let's take, again, same way that Dr. Ntabiseng has done, in the medical space, in the medical legal claim. The biggest issue there, which all of us, Dr. Motsoaledi shared, was files are not there. And you know what is important in a file when you go to court? If I went to a hospital, the doctor has seen me, the doctor must have those notes to say, yes, I saw Pinky, this is what I did, and so on. And once that information is missing, that's when these lawyers are able to rip government off. But now, if we digitize, the doctor sees you, you see the doctor, and when you exit at the dispensary, you also do a happy letter yourself. You fill in, technology-wise to say, it's true, Pinky, I saw this doctor. It's true, he did 1, 2, 3. I agree. Are you happy? Then you say happy. Now, if anyone goes to court, Pinky again goes to court and say, I want to sue the hospital. Already, that information is in the hospital and you have shown your happiness and so on and so on. So that's where all of us need to go. Digitalization of government, it's one of the things. Now, where is the problem? The biggest problem is that we have a fragmented approach. You have State Information Technology Agency, which is SITA. In the public service, you have what they call Center for Public Service Innovation. You have the Innovation Hub from DCDT. You have Science and Technology somewhere. Now, we need to amalgamate this thing and start to say, guys, can you come together, sit and look at how we modernize government? Young people must come in and start to say, this is how we can help resolve the NSFAS backlog so that when a student is registered as an indigent from grade 1, by the time he does grade 12, NSFAS knows so many students are coming just to apply. So it becomes seamless. How? Because technology has made basic services and higher education and home affairs and social development to speak to each other and help government to respond. So we're picking up all those things. We have to be agile. We have to see how we correct this thing. But all is not lost. Dr. Ntabiseng also spoke about the age at public service. Of course, we may be overtaken, some of us, because we are towards the 6th floor, when these young people are at their 20s, still at their 2nd floor. So government through public service also says you are allowed to exit the system with no penalty on your pension as long as you are 55. What does that say? Because you are a DG or a DDG or whatever at that level, sometimes, or somebody highly paid, even if you're not a DG, because of your service and other things, once you exit the system at 55, you are able to allow us to employ 3 or 4 young people at entry level. Now, not only are we bringing younger generation, we also address that issue that Dr. Ntabiseng was talking to, of youth unemployment, especially those with qualifications. Then there's intake, and then we're able to deal with this. I think resolving the issues, we are now becoming more structured. The biggest issue is agility. The quicker we act on some of these things, the more hope we bring to our people. Thank you very much.
Chairperson,
Madam
can I go
Lydia, you
ahead?
were next? Yes, thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Greetings to the Honorable Minister, Dr. Ntabiseng, guests, and other people who have logged in this important launch. Host, are you asking me to start my video? Okay, but the Deputy Minister has covered me quite a lot in terms of some of the issues. I was going to start indicating that we need groundbreaking changes in terms of how we do things. And it starts with planning. We just came out of a conference, the annual Public Sector Innovation Conference that we held last week. And the theme was digital transformation through mission-oriented innovation. So this really tallies with what we are trying to do. I mean, if you look at the way we plan as government, we plan, DM has said, in silos. And as we enter into another 5-year strategic, 5-year strategic term, I really hope that this time around we won't do planning in silos. We work. It's a 5-year strategic plan with 5 APPs in it. Each of us has targets that are not aligned at all. So I really hope that I just came out of the MTech meeting, and they're saying DPMB is going to relook at the framework for planning, and I hope it will be groundbreaking. Otherwise, we'll be here again next year lamenting the same things. So groundbreaking changes in terms of how we approach our programs is critical. But we still have challenges. Yes, not all is lost, as DM has said. I always use an example of a typist. We used to have typing pools. In my time, I'm one of those DMs. I'm also in the 5th floor as well. We had typing pools where I used to work at all the hospitals many months ago. But what happens with the typing pool? Because of technology, we are able to generate our own documents and, type and what have you. And we repost those typing posts, typists, to be something else, So it is possible. But we are also faced with issues, that needs to be in place. As an example, our DDG Mandla Ngobo from DPS, they always say we have less than 70 cybersecurity specialists in the public service. The whole public service has less than 70 cybersecurity specialists. So when you start talking digital transformation, what are we saying? and I've had this discussion with Busan as well, to say, you know, you need to bring in things like drone technology training, you know, user experience specialists and what have you, as a suite, one of the suite of courses that we should be rendering in the public service, so that we become ready for this thing called digital transformation. The issue around digital ID, we can't even go that route without putting things in place, including strong cybersecurity. You know, in the conference, we had a presentation from SSA, and what the lady said was, it's not a matter of if a cyber attack happens, it's when it happens, are you ready for you to deal with it? One thing that we are promoting, for the comfort of the speaker before DM, one of the things that we're pushing as the Center for Public Service Innovation is for departments to start insourcing system developers, you know, for us to limit relying on third parties in terms of technology solutions that we want to bring in. And last week, we were with the minister, and we had, as part of the conference, we had what we call the Development Convention. Believe you me, we had system developers from this very public service that we are talking about that has challenges, that have developed solutions for their own department. So what we've done as CPSI is that we are trying to open source code, so that if there's a source code for e-leave, as an example from Eastern Cape, we open it up for other provinces and other departments to use it. And it's moving very slowly, but that's the direction that we want to take, to make sure that we in-source. And as CPSI, I have two young, you know, system developers. Yes, we can't keep them for long, but they also want to work within the public service so that they can build solutions on their own. One point that I want, you know, I know I have a lot to say without wasting time. For this program, NSG, I hope you'll also look at, not in detail, but something that I discovered as a woman in the 5th floor, is the effect or the impact of menopause on us women leaders. You know, I always thought, you know, menopause is only about hot flashes, but I discovered there's also a mental element to it. So somewhere try to infuse, you know, we struggle, not being depressed, but yes, being depressed for no reason, because we are going through this journey that you don't understand. And what I discovered is that a lot of women, I mean, I asked my sister, why am I feeling like this? No, it's part of menopause. So we need to be vocal about menopause and its effect or impact on our mental status as women, so that as you lead as a woman who's going through menopause, you are able to seek help, because you may misunderstand what's going through you. So I thought, let me use this opportunity to also, you know, bring this to the attention of whoever is captaining the course. You may need to also infuse a little bit about menopause and what it does to you as a woman. I'm now taking medication because I was starting to feel down for no reason, and I thought from now on I'll use such opportunities to also bring awareness about us as women, because we are a special brand, you know, as well. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thanks, Lydia. Thanks, DM. We're getting close to our top of the hour. There is Madam Tsakani Chaka. If you could keep it brief, please. Thanks.
Oh.
Tsakani, can you hear? Thanks for those chats that came through. There is interest in partnering with the NSG, amongst others, in the pursuit of these same capacity development intents around technologies. So one participant has left their contact details. We will not deal with that here. And eligibility, you don't have to be a PERSAL number carrier. We can support you. Just be a lifelong learner. Participate in the executive education programs of the NSG. And then, Principal, if you could perhaps speak to some of what came through, that is quite a wide-ranging set of comments, questions, and even your own thoughts around what it is we can do. I'm quite still stuck on the loyalty cards.
You get that.
As opposed to a loyalty system in the spirit of e-government, e-governance. Principal, over to you.
Okay, no, thanks, colleagues. I'm not supposed to be here other than to just show support. Just to show support that as the NSG, we invest resources in the design of programs like these ones. Now, as I said earlier on, and I quite insist on this, women in the public sector will remain at HR unless they take full responsibility for advancing themselves in terms of skills, knowledge, experience, and exposure. And of course, also demanding that in the spaces where we work, we've got to be given those opportunities. And they are fully acknowledge the fact that there are constraints. It is not in every workplace in the public sector as a whole that such opportunities may be given. Some of you may want to do a postgraduate program in digital and your MBA, your CFO may deny you and say it is expensive. You may want to do a BTech in HR, you get record approval. You may want to do, postgraduate program in finance. You may get a question, what do you want to do with it? Because you are in a different space. And the consequence of all of that is that you will then not be able to progress, because as you move up in the public sector, there is a tendency to demand a lot more specialization, both in terms of your training, qualifications, as well as experience. So basically, I'm saying you need to push the envelope, push the boundaries, and negotiate the system.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you will be confined to HR. In fact, in the private sector, I was recently visiting a friend who works in an insurance, a very big insurance company. It's a white male dominated space. And I met the executive HR. It's a white female. And she was telling horror stories of the amount of abuse that she's going through in the boardroom, because she's the only woman there. I mean, being white means nothing for them. She's the only woman, and the type of messages that are being shared on the WhatsApp groups and the things they say, she says, I feel extremely uncomfortable being in this space. In the public sector, I think it could be the same thing as well. Of course, as men, we also enjoy other benefits, such as the fact that we may go together to soccer with male colleagues in your own department and elsewhere. We may go have beer, and there's a lot of things that go on in those type of spaces, as much as there are people who say decisions are taken in golf days and things like those. Also, as men, we do go to Shisanyama, and we talk about you. Or at least we talk about how we provide support to each other. So in addition to making, or at least we establish those bonds, those relationships. And that once that bond is created, the first women, you may not have that type of experience. Our mothers do better because they go to church together. We don't. Well, I mean, okay, there are social spaces where people drink and do other things, but in the main, they would find that there we're not talking about professional advancement. It's more about comparing this and that and being the first and so on. So we've got to push the envelope, colleagues, in terms of how the organizations in the public sector invest in your own professional development, negotiate those spaces, how you become exposed in more, creative engagements where you work, and break the ceiling of confining you, to HR, as the case is in many instances in the public sector, and of course in the private sector. And finally, this thing of digital transformation, and I like the examples that you made, Dr. Mole, because the mistake people make is that digital transformation is a preserve of people who work in IT. And you've made concrete examples here that as an HR manager, how do you use technology to improve your efficiency as an HR manager? Do you tell to your IT and your CFO to buy certain software and hardware that will help you to become more efficient as a head of HR? Because that becomes digital transformation. Do you keep live forms, hard copies? Do you have electronic, copies? Can you manage your, produce analytics about your own employees? Or you'll do the physical counting, when we're doing analytics about your own, your payroll and things like those. And that if we're in IT, of course, it's natural that you must do so. And the example you made in supply chain is important. So you cannot be working in supply chain and be refused to do a postgraduate diploma in digital transformation, when you may use that knowledge and expertise to digitally transform how you manage SCM and assets in your department. So when your manager says, I will only pay for you if you do a postgraduate diploma in supply chain because it's relevant to you, you must disrupt that, because that person wants to confine you to studying treasury, instruction notes and things like those, when you may already have the basics. You want to know how you can use technology to improve what you do. Similarly, in communications and project management, contract management, and then providing services. The example here is SASSA. In 20, and it's a good one because it was done by women executives at SASSA. In 2020, SASSA was asked to implement the 350 SRD grant. It was during level 5 and 4 of the lockdown. Therefore, they were not able to call people to apply through the SASSA offices. Eventually, they took a decision to process applications through WhatsApp, email, and USSD. That is how 16 million people applied for 350 grant. They used the most basic available technology, which is WhatsApp. And indeed, they did apply. 14 million people applied. They processed them. 6 million people were paid. 290,000 of them got them fraudulently, including public servants, prisoners, NSFAS students, and others. But because they were building the algorithm on the go, it took them about 35 days to detect, and they were able to, and they did stop those payments. You can imagine if they did not go to the digital transformation window just during that period, that many people would not have been able to access that money. We can talk in a different platform about why, when there were other issues there in terms of who was applying and how they were applying. And I'm sure there are some amongst you here who may have, helpers and gardeners who have demanded that you must now only pay them through e-wallet. Because if you pay them through the bank system, SASSA will be able to pick it up and that they have an income and then stop their payments. I mean, poor people have creative ways. They are more digitally innovative than some of us are. But I was using that as an example.
New idea.
So finally, I want to emphasize the following. Digital transformation is about 3 things. Of course, it's about the software, And this is a software between HR system, contract management, SCM, and communications, and any other aspect of work we do in the public sector. These are transformations also about the hardware, the choices you make about what hardware will be bought, because you do require that. But finally, it's also about what I call brainware. Your attitude, your thoughts, your skill, and your ability to think. If you're afraid, you will not be able to make the breakthroughs. If your attitude is that this is just an IT thing, you will not be able to make those necessary breakthroughs. Whereas if you approach it with confidence and you want to learn with your curiosity, you will be able to make those important technological breakthroughs. We are happy that many public servants are now doing e-learning courses at the NSG, so those barriers are being broken, and there's a lot more to come in future. In October, when our program begins, we look forward to seeing you in the classroom. We'll be going to different spaces other than here at the NSG, and we are hoping that we will open up this conversation even further. We'll be much more technical. Of course, we'll deal with soft issues like what Lydia is talking about, mental health and all of those things. The program will certainly deal with those things, but we'll also be pushing the envelope on the hard stuff, on the science of statecraft and how women can advance by ensuring that they build their own depth in various areas of expertise, because that is a much more stronger weapon of breaking the glass ceiling than just talking about dealing only with just the soft issues, because people will see you as an ethicist when people must also see you as a specialist in a particular field or science that you are applying in the public sector, whether you are employed, whether you are appointed like deputy ministers and boards and all those type of things. Otherwise, thank you very much, colleagues, and congratulations for coming and being part of this journey. Program Director.
Well summarized, and all we can say is we embrace technology, we embrace change triggered through technology. We walk far, we walk fast, we walk together. Look out for that three-part immersion in the Women in Leadership program, because there is built in there by design a project that is cross-sector. So it's not just us talking and suggesting improvements. We will reconvene to say, having taken these insights into practice, what is the work in progress and how do we support each other to embed some of these improvements, one improvement at a time, and cumulatively making that big difference. On this note, a big thank you for your coming here and spending this very, very precious time. Thank you to Dr. Moleko one more time. Thank you to Deputy Minister. We're going back to the second floor. We have just some one or two liner to sign off with you. And as mentioned, we have dropped a few things, maybe at least that brochure online. Everybody who's here, thank you. And our contact details are available there. So don't worry right now if we don't get to the nitty-gritties of the program and registration and so on. We do promise, as I said, in a week's time, you'll get all of that info. And if you have any particular query, we are very responsive. We'll support and clarify all those questions. Principal, thank you for being amongst the women, showing us the support, leading by example. Thank you to Ndibo. Thank you to Khomotso and our colleagues at the back, Tiani Pule, who have I not mentioned. Behind every successful woman are other women and supportive men. See you later.
They try to break me. She tells centuries of invisibility. She stood. Like a seed, she fell and rose again. Between the rocks, Miss Resilience, the Shiro. They said she was non-white, invented theories about her, but her ways were crystal clear. Freedom was her destiny. Meet Resilience, the Shiro. They enslaved her, becoming a non-being, colonized her people, becoming a property of the empire. Centuries of racial subjugation. She is here, Miss Resilience, the Shiro. They broke her skull, her nose, her heart, her womb, her being. Lynched her man, she witnessed. Like a rose, she bloomed. Meet Resilience, the Shiro. Looting her history and artifacts to decorate the gates of the empire. Still, she shines. Miss Resilience, the Shiro. Body shaming her ancestors as object of Caucasian curiosity. An experimental doll of biomedical science. A guinea pig of the pharmaceutical industrial complex. She is still here, unshaken. Meet Resilience, the Shiro. Drowning her history, burning her archives, burying her heritage. Miss Resilience, the Shiro. Like a wet thorn, she stands firm, pricking her oppressor's conscience, asserting her being, reclaiming her past, the present and the future. Meet Resilience, the Shiro. She is here, forging a future, building nations, nurturing, outliving poverty, civil wars and epidemics, negotiating capitalism and his twin brother, patriarchy. Miss Resilience, the Shiro. She sings, prays, meditates, reads, fights and toils. She sings, prays, meditates, reads, fights and toils. The mother, sister, lover, leader, executive, entrepreneur, innovator, the liberator. Freedom beckons for her and her people. Her story is mine, yours, ours. Her aspirations we share. Her freedom is our future. Meet Miss Resilience, our Shiro.